My daughter and her best friend was killed in September of '98, and a year ago, my house was shot in where 3 people was shot.
5 or 6-year-old son who had to kiss his father in a coffin.
It seemed like I have not been able to even deal with my daughter's death because it's one after another.
They're tired of it. They're tired of going to funerals. They're tired of, hearing about loved ones that they grew up with, that they went to school with, that now that's laying in the casket and visiting them, at a cemetery.
And I was tired. I was tired of being affiliated with gangs, always having to look over my shoulder. I was tired of doing time. Every time I went to jail, I was getting put in worse and worse places and having to deal with more and more violence.
People in general that's scared to even have their kids to go outside and play. I have a 7-month-old granddaughter that if things don't change, she will never be able to play outside. She will never get to know the kids in the neighborhood.
Kids are in fear of their life on a daily basis. Whether they speak to it or not or say it, they have a fear of leaving home every morning. They don't know, some of them, whether or not if they're even going to return home.
I don't feel safe at all. I think that it's very scary a lot of times. Even though I tend to carry a tough look, but still, it's, I'm always constantly have to be aware of what's going on all the time.
People that are afraid begin to become suspicious, how they interact with each other. If you go to a neighborhood that has violence going on it, how many people come to church? How many people go and hang out at the local community center? And how many people, have lifetime relationships? And how many people are investing in the yard? And how many people are doing those things?
If you walk around Chinatown and ask the residents, a lot will feel it's relatively safe, but a lot will tell you that they still feel unsafe.
When I was in my violent relationship, I had told myself that if I ever got out, this is what I wanted to do, to support other victims of violence. And when we speak about victims, we're not only speaking about the direct victims they harmed, we're speaking about their families who are victims of their violence because the loss they feel by losing this loved one to go to prison. And in addition to that, we're speaking about the communities, the youth, the families, the women, the men who are watching them commit the violence in the community. And basically what's happening is that, many of these men who are in our program, they're seen as role models by youth in their community.
I think what's causing the violence is a lack of education. I think a lot of poverty.
When you have an overcrowded and a low-income population live very closely to each other, I think that they easily become victims of crimes.
A lot of violence, a lot of emotional and verbal, not so much physical, between my mom and my dad. My dad with the kids, with me in particular a little bit. But it set up a dynamic for me that played out for the rest of my life.
Some of the root causes of violence in our area has been really just the absence of a real family, a real community around children, a real community around young people, particularly our fathers.
My father was in prison the year that I was born, and my mother was a violent alcoholic. Actually came into the Child Protective Services system at about 8 or 9 from family violence. I went from there, from my own violence in that system, into juvenile delinquent system over in Alameda County. Ended up in foster homes and institutions and reformatories through my own delinquency, and then got molested in a foster home and other things that when I became an adult, I started acting out all these different things. So I became an addict and did violent crimes, went to prison.
California is turning from an agricultural, if you will, state into a place where now we're going to have more penitentiaries in California than anything else. We're housing a whole lot of men.
I would say that there's an infrastructure of drug dealing that's going on that facilitates so many other crimes on top of it. The drug dealing causes people to want the drugs, and so they're willing to do anything it takes to get the drugs.
With the heroin addiction, it gets to a point where it's a physical need and it's mandatory and you gotta have it. And so by the age of 16, I was pretty much willing to do what I had to do to get dope.
Drug dealing and prostitution and turf and just basically out there all-out battles, you know, that people are having with each other. Disrespect, attitudes, number of different things. You know, you can't just pinpoint it on what caused it, you know, but it's a lot of different things that's taking place in the community.
Most of these aren't gangs. They're basically bandits from different areas.
People survive inside institution walls is that they all click up and become a member of some kind of group.
You know, you have a group of guys that you know, bonded with each other, and you have another group of guys that bonded with each other. And one incident, one of them two people out of that group meet with each other and get into a squabble. So then you bring both parties together, and then it becomes a fight, a gun battle, and next thing you know, somebody's dead.
You have groupings of people who are not interacting at all or spending any time with one another. It's based on not just a racial issue, but a class issue.
We look at the popular culture. What does the popular culture tell you? Turn it on. Turn it on at night. You see, the popular culture tells you that if you look at cops, well, every black man is a criminal, right? And everyone has a gun, and the only way to deal with this thing is to have a bigger gun and more guns. That's what the popular culture says. So what does the kids do? Well, they pick up on the popular culture. Well, this is the best way to make a buck, and this is the best way to influence other people, is pull a gun out.
I don't think a video or the media causes, you know, some people to go out there and commit violent acts.
In my day, it was Brando and Cagney and that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? But it's really, I see, you know, kind of an adolescent glorification of the role that allows a level of violence that includes gun violence, the history of America has got a lot of gun violence in it.
Gun violence is a reflection of the government's institutionalization of war. We build weapons for what? To kill people.
Violence is learned and it can be unlearned, and that it's a social problem and it's an educational problem and it's a health problem as well. Stipulating that there are some deep psychological problems as well. But we recognize that our culture is riddled with violence in a variety of capacities, from the media to our homes to our community, and it's sometimes glorified in subtle and not so subtle ways.
The meaner we get, the meaner the children get. If we take a very abusive policy and we keep locking up our children for long periods of time, they're going to become very, very more antisocial.
Nobody ever, you know, worked with me on what had happened to me and how did I feel about it, or, you know, it never got addressed. And 9 years later, when I got emancipated from the juvenile system, because I had been molested, it never got addressed either. Just kind of, you know, I went from, at age 17, they said, well, you know, you were blessed by a foster parent, she had a license by our court, and blah, 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 you know, we're gonna emancipate you. So they said, you can go now. You know, and it was like the most irresponsible thing for the system to have done at that point, because I just, you know, it's like took off down the street with my hair on fire.
I think that for minority communities and for non-English speaking communities, such as our neighborhood, we deserve to have the same attention from the police department as other neighborhoods.
We have a serious need for more police, more patrols. We also need a heavy-duty amount of community police involvement.
Where the police knew the community people knew the police.
Not so much of, you know, shaking everybody down. Yeah, racial profiling is a big issue. You know, they know who's doing the shootings out there. The police know they have some kind of lead, but they have no witness. So that makes it hard for the police officers to do their job. And we understand that part. A lot of people are scared to come forward and testify.
Because a lot of people don't want to put their lives at stake.
The lack of results, it keeps people from really voicing out what they feel. It keeps people from getting involved in the community.
But at the same time, you have a group of 5 guys standing around talking, and then the police roll up on them and they start questioning them, asking them, pull them out for their IDs. If they was doing something wrong, then I understand. But you have a lot of young brothers and sisters that's out there talking to their friends and just stopping for a minute, passing through on their way home, and they get stopped by the police.
In terms of our district attorney, I do have to say that the perception in our community is he is soft on crimes, and I think some crimes need to be prosecuted and be convicted so that people are not afraid to report.
The police and the district attorney's department are being scapegoats for the social problems of our community. It's a responsibility of the people of the community to make changes to save their community and stop using departments that really don't know what they're doing. They can only help us make these changes. We have the responsibility to make the changes to save our children.
The community can be the eyes for the police. We can tell them what's going on. Say, hey, this group of people here are heavily involved in X, and this group over here is heavily involved in Y. And this way, they know who to talk to, they know who to deal with, and they don't have to do so much work.
I think we need more prevention programs. We need more loving care. We need more people working. We need more mentors, older people working with the younger people. If locking children up was the answer, they all would be saints by now. But that's not the case. We're institutionalized, we warehouse our children, and they come out without the means to survive. They just stay within a cycle of violence within the institution and within the streets.
By the time I get someone who has a criminal history for violence, to try to create an opportunity for them or an understanding for them to change, it's like trying to push a rock up a hill. It's really difficult. You know, sometimes I have people that are 30, 40, 50 years old, have been in prison 10, 15 years, have done, you know, 5 different violent crimes and stuff.
Got to break the cycle. And how do we do it? We got to get in the community. We got to sit down and we got to talk to them. We got to badger them. We got to say, hey, look, man, what you doing? Do you really want to die? Ask yourself. You get a lot of them telling me, I don't care if I die. I don't care if I die. You don't care if you die? You got a 3-year-old son right here. What he's going to do without daddy? And some of them say, man, you know, I ain't never looked at it like that.
Really thankful that in San Francisco somebody said we're going to try to be responsible about the people that we bring in. You know, these people are like in total crisis. You know, if you're running around the streets shooting drugs and robbing people, you're in total crisis. You know, but it doesn't really get looked at that way from the criminal justice system because, you know, consequences need to be addressed to those behaviors. But that person's in total consequence. While you have them in custody, if nothing changes when you let them back out. Just 5 years have gone by and the same dysfunction is going to act out. This person's in basically the same place.
Once I start to learn where I got the violent behavior from, start to realize that I don't need to believe in certain belief systems that I've been taught if I don't choose to.
A lot of people have those kinds of experiences, you know, where they had struggles in their life. And I think those are the people that need to come together to help and figure out and design ways that the community can help other people that are struggling right now.
You have to be the leaders that you are to make a difference. You have to tell somebody that ain't the right thing to do. If you see something that's wrong, stop it.
I'd always looked at what separated people because that helped me to be violent to people. You know, when I learned to look at people as human beings and start to embrace their culture and background, and see the similarities, it really helped to bridge a gap.
The media has to, and they must start airing positive stuff on TV. They have to, or in the newspaper. They have to start airing positive environments and positive atmosphere about things that's taking place in the community. That's the only way that kids gonna sit back and say, oh, that was good. You know, they forgot about little Johnny down the street that got a 4.0.
The police department, the district attorney's office, the public health department, the school department, the general hospital department, the state department, and all the federal government should be working hand in hand with the community-based organizations to develop alternatives and prevention services for our children.
And I'm not just talking about just money. Money is not the issue. I don't think is the issue here. Sometimes the more money you throw at a problem, the bigger the problem becomes. I think the real issue is how can we as individuals who are the grassroots people of our community, not just the people who are on the outside, who are in some of the CBOs and some of the other organizations who are there just to glean money from it, but who are the grassroots people in the organizations who can actually speak to people?
My ideal community would be clean streets, no one standing on corners, not as many liquor stores, more educational type agencies, more mental health type things, a day that my grandchild can play outside and without me being concerned about her safety, a day that we as adults stick together.
We would be more humanistic towards one another and more loving towards one another, more caring towards one another.
Be able to walk our children down the street, actually to even have our children walk down the street by themselves sometimes.
That people would be able to walk with their head held high, they'd look each other in the eye, they'd help each other when they hear somebody's in need, that kids don't have to sleep with one eye open, and that people can have a sense of just basic human dignity.
And I think that if you live in a safe and healthy community, then everything will just kind of fall in place.
And I know that it sounds like really crazy, that, oh my God, you're thinking about utopia and there's no way you're going to be able to stop it. And I know that. Sometimes my work here in the jail, because I now work for the program here in the jail, feels like a drop of rain on a wildfire. But the thing is that it's got to start somewhere. And if I can model it myself for other men, which I do, I think that it's a beginning.